genre.
Hello and welcome back to Doctor's Companion Presents Doctor Who The Long Way Round, the weekly podcast where we review and discuss every episode of Doctor Who, one doctor at a time. I'm Cassandra Fredrickson.
I'm Nick Jimenez.
And I'm Scott Corelli.
And today on the show we'll be discussing The Tomb of the Cybermen, the second Doctor's 8th story.
A couple of things that are interesting about Tomb of the Cybermen. One, so like at this time, the producer of the show was Innes Lloyd, and the story editors were Jerry Davis and Peter Bryant. For those of you following along at home, and maybe the credits don't mean much to you at the moment, the concept of like a showrunner was very different back in this era of BBC. Now you have like a Stephen Moffat, and yes, he had like a producer who was doing the sort of business side of things, but the producer is not typically creatively involved. So back in the day, you know, you had your producer and then you had your story editors. Story editors were kind of like the role that Stephen Moffat or Russell T Davies or Chris Chibnall has now. Which is that they sort of oversee the scripts. They do any rewrites on the scripts. The difference being that story editors were not allowed to have screenplay credit due to BBC rules prohibiting story editors or producers from having credits on the episode as writers. It was like some sort of BBC union dispute thing. So the story editors currently, Jerry Davis, Peter Bryant, producer Innes Lloyd. And what happens is that you have Jerry Davis, who is thinking about leaving the show, and as well as Innes Lloyd. They're both thinking about leaving the show. And as we talked about last time, we talked about an episode with the censor rights. They had gotten into the habit of filming the first story of the next season as the last story of the filming block of the previous season, so that when they start the next season, they're already one story ahead of the game. And so the same thing was going to happen with Tomb of the Cybermen. Tomb of the Cybermen was going to be the last story shot for season 4, even though it was going to be the first episode of season 5. And with Innes Lloyd and Jerry Davis both being like, we're thinking we might leave, BBC and Sidney Newman, head of drama, decided that they should give somebody else a shot at producing and script editing. As a result, Peter Bryant, who was the previous one of the story editors, the Jerry Davis's sort of like assistant story editor, was upgraded to producer for Tomb of the Cybermen. And the story editing was done by Victor Pemberton, who was Peter Bryant's assistant. But this is the only story that he ever did story editor for, because he did not care for the job and ended up sort of just bailing on the production as a whole. So we have Jerry Davis freed up. And the thing about that is that Kit Pedler, the creator of the Cybermen, who was not a sort of professional writer in any sense, he kind of struggled with writing scripts for television, was told that because of the popularity of the Daleks, you know, Doctor Who needed a new Daleks, and that ended up being the Cybermen, or so it seemed. And so they just kept going back to Kit Pedler to write Cybermen stories the same way that they did with Terry
Nation.
Yes, Terry Nation. Thank you. Terry Nation about the Daleks, because they were like, oh, well, you created them, so you should write all the stories. But Kit Pedler, not as comfortable writing as Terry Nation, who some might say is too comfortable writing. But Kit Pedler was like, okay, like I'll write a new story, but like I need some help. And Jerry Davis, who for this story would not have a story editor credit, was able to co-write and get written by credit with Kit Pedler on Tomb of the Cybermen. So Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis wrote this one together. Tomb of the Cybermen was originally going to be called Planet of the Cybermen, which was then changed to, what was the secondary? The Ice Tombs of Telos. Telos? How do you say
Telos,
that?
I think.
Telos.
Yeah.
The Ice Tombs of Telos, which I actually really like as a name just because it doesn't spoil the reveal of the Cybermen. However, you find out that it's a Cyberman story very, very quickly. So at the same time, I'm not super bothered by the spoiler.
Yeah, they're on the door.
Right, exactly. They're on the entrance to the tomb. But, there's a solid 10 minutes where you don't know that you're watching a Cyberman story.
I like how Ice Tombs of Telos scans with Werewolves of London.
Yeah. Ice Tombs of Telos. Other fun things in this one. We have like a couple of fun stories. So one of which is, and Nick and I were looking up this actress and trying to figure out what her deal was. And then it wasn't until I started doing my research that I found out. So we have Shirley Cooklin, who plays Miss Cafton in the story, the sort of evil, unfortunately brown-faced Miss Cafton.
Secondary villain,
constantly wanting to pull switches and push buttons throughout the story. She is Peter Bryant's wife. That's why she was cast in this. But no one knew that she was Peter Bryant's wife. And so between setups and things, Fraser Hines was kind of into her, like had the hots for her. And so between setups was constantly flirting with her and asking her out. And she was too embarrassed to say that her husband was his boss. But he later found out and was embarrassed, to say the least. Oh my God. Yeah. So that was happening a lot on this. Also happening was that this was shot in the middle of the summer, which they tried to avoid at the time because, they didn't air condition any of these sound stages because that would cause noise and you can't have that. So it was really hot in these tombs, and everyone's wearing jackets because it's supposed to be cold, but it's not. It's a scorcher. And so there was a moment, and it's actually in the episode where Shirley's character is unconscious because she gets shot or whatever. And or maybe she's not, maybe she's just dead. I don't remember which period of time it was, but she just like legit fell asleep, and so she's just asleep, like full blown asleep, in those scenes where she's unconscious or dead or whatever. And she actually ruined a take at one point because she was snoring during the take. That's funny because she was like straight up asleep because of how hot it was in there. Because, when you get super hot, like sometimes you get sleepy.
Sure.
So that happened. And
I've seen a cat.
Yeah, exactly. And then Deborah Watling, who plays Victoria, during the production of episode 3, she had the flu.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So that wasn't fun for anybody involved, I can imagine. Other fun things, the violence of this episode, specifically the cyber controller's head blowing up and another Cyberman getting his innards like pulled out with like liquid and stuff going everywhere. So the violence of that was very controversial at the time, to the point that Kit Pedler, the co-writer of the episode, creator of the Cybermen, actually had to go onto the BBC commentary program Talkback to debate the issue and defend the show.
That's interesting.
It was a big time. It was like no one had seen anything like that in what was ostensibly a children's show at the time.
Sure.
So
to say nothing of that's interesting because like the show would only become more violent, I think, in just a few years. I wonder if we're gonna come back to this in future, or if other episodes were like, hey.
Big time.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We'll definitely get back to more of that as we go along. I think we already talked about it a little bit in the Sixth Doctor era.
Yeah.
The violence of,
because that one's also a Cyberman story, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Man, something about the Cybermen story brings on the blood and gore. I don't know what that's about.
Because they're zombies.
Yeah, I guess that's true. The only other part that I just thought was fun was that every episode of Tomb of the Cybermen, as it aired, was immediately followed by an episode of The Dick Van Dyke Show. I don't know why that tickles me, but for some reason it really does. Yeah. So there you go. That's the 401 on Tomb of the Cybermen.
Yeah, really interesting one today.
Yeah. Really in the weeds, but yeah, at least there's some interesting stuff for sure. So let's talk about episode 1.
Tomb of the Cybermen Part 1. Written by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis. Directed by Morris Berry. Produced by Peter Bryant. Script edited by Victor Pemberton. Air date September 2nd, 1967. On the planet Telos, an archaeological expedition uncovers a hidden entrance by blowing up a mountainside. When one of the members tries to open the doors, he is electrocuted. As this happens, the TARDIS lands nearby, and the second Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria stumble onto the scene and are met with suspicion. Perry, the expedition's leader, explains they are here to find the remains of the Cybermen, who apparently died out 5 centuries ago. The expedition is funded by Kaftan, who is accompanied by her servant Toberman and her colleague Klieg. Deciding to come with them, the Doctor helps open the doors. The group splits up to explore the building, while the Doctor stays in the main control room with the expedition leader and Klieg to open a mysterious hatch. Victoria, Kaftan, and one of the other men discover a chamber with a sarcophagus-looking device on the wall, facing some machinery that was apparently used to revitalize the Cybermen. After Victoria is locked inside, the Doctor is called to help her escape, and he suspects Kaftan is to blame for the incident. Meanwhile, Jamie and Hayden, another member of the expedition, experiment with a control panel in another smaller room. After activating a certain combination, a Cyberman pops up from out of nowhere and fires a gun, killing Hayden. I like how big of a cast we start out with, and then slowly they all just kind of die or disappear.
It's a huge cast. I was remarking on that while we were watching it. It's like there's like 12 people on their team, right?
Something like that. It's a proper expedition.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
It feels very much like almost like an Alan Quartermain novel, or like I don't know. Yeah, just like this big sprawling like expedition of people.
Yeah, yeah. Is this the best first adventure for a companion? And I say first adventure, not counting the one where they meet the Doctor, because that doesn't count because they're not a companion.
Oh, so you would consider The Beast Below to be Amy Pond's first adventure?
Yes, that's what I would say. Yeah, first adventure as a companion. Is this the best one?
I don't know.
I don't know that I can think of a better one.
Can we get broad? Can I say broad stuff?
Sure.
Okay. I will say that this was really cool to watch from that perspective, because I really started the episode not liking Victoria.
Oh.
And being like, I don't know, like, who is she? Like, she's so like, oh, I don't know. She's kind of a disappointment from like Polly and Susan and Barbara. And then she started just like having moments of like, I'm going to do this, or like, I'm doing this, or and like,
yeah.
And I was like, oh, Victoria's cool. Like, and so I ended being like, I really like, so like, that was a fun trip to go on.
Yeah.
That's
from that
awesome.
perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Victoria is cool. I just don't know that she's teamed up with the right Doctor companion combo. I think she would be better with someone else. Just because her and Jamie are similar a little too, because they're both from similar time periods, you know? And they're both from like the past, and they're like, oh wow, this is so crazy. It's why I like Zoe and Jamie so much, because they complement each other because they're opposites. You haven't met Zoe yet, but you will, and you'll love her too.
I don't know, because like at first I was worried really more than anything, because I thought they were writing her very damselly, and I was like, oh, I don't know if that's not Doctor Who to me, and then what by the end, what I like about Jamie in this episode is he was very like Shaggy like.
Yeah.
And Victoria seemed to be becoming more and more like foot forward to me. I don't know what's coming. So that dynamic to me has potential.
Okay. That's cool.
Because like what I love that Jamie's always the first to escape. He's always like last one in, first one out.
Yeah. Yeah. The Doctor reveals that he's 450 years old. I forgot to mention this in the background. So he mentions that he's 450 years old, give or take. I guess their thought process on that age was that in a previous episode, I guess the first Doctor mentioned that he was 650 years old. And now the second Doctor is saying 450 years old. And they're saying that that's because when he rejuvenated himself, he lost 200 years.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is like kind of like adding credence to the fact of like what our theory has always been, which is that at the time they didn't think of Troughton as the second Doctor. They thought of him as a younger version of the first Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
That the rejuvenation was a literal de-aging of that Doctor, not like
becoming a new person.
Not becoming a new person, like regeneration, like we eventually get with Pertwee, I think is the first time that they are like, oh, okay, maybe this is what it is.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that at the time they're like, yeah, so he's only 450 years old, despite existing for 650. The part that's important is the internal age, not the external age, I guess. Which I think is an interesting way to think about aging. This is our return to Planet Quarry.
Yes. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. This is the introduction of Telos, which is not the origin planet of the Cybermen, but is a planet that they took over and like changed everybody on the planet to being a Cyberman. It's like their secondary planet. It's their home away from home.
Right, because the 10th planet is the one that moves around, right?
Mondas.
Mondas, yeah.
Yeah. Mondas is their origin planet. And then so is Telos or Telos, isn't that mentioned in the Russell T Davies era as like, is that the name of the company?
Maybe.
That builds the Cybermen?
In the alternate universe?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, that sounds right?
That feels familiar.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It must
I don't
be
know that
like
I've ever put that together before.
I don't know if it's exactly the same.
I don't know.
I don't remember. It's been too long since I've seen that one.
So once they get inside the tomb, which there's some rigmarole about, electrified front doors and all of that.
A man dies.
No big deal.
Rigmarole.
Yeah, rigmarole. A man dies, and then his body is gone at the end of the story. So I don't know what happened to him.
Oh, they took him to the rocket.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Okay.
The captain was just like, all right, well, that's crazy. Also, I'm obsessed with the captain. Like, he has such like an old school Hollywood voice. It's like the
American
best.
guy?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we were talking about him the whole time.
So here's my thing with American guy.
Yeah.
He is either, maybe by some sliver of a chance, that's actually his natural, like, accent. But it sounded like an English person doing kind of a strained American accent, which, hey, no judgment.
Sure.
My question is, why did that character have to be American?
Maybe it was just a choice he made.
This guy's an asshole. That's fair enough. Yeah. This guy's a huge tool that doesn't listen to anybody and bumbles his way through every situation,
including name preferences.
Yes.
Right.
Just Victoria just constantly telling him to stop calling her Vic, and he never listens. He just keeps condescendingly calling her Vic. And because he's calling her Vic, everyone else calls her Vic.
Yeah, like the first mate.
Yeah.
The best thing he does is wander out of the show for a whole episode.
Yeah. But once they're inside, they're like, wow, that's it. It's just this one room, and then that thing that's sealed, that whatever, like there's no doors. And the doctor's like, actually, there are doors if you flip these switches. And I'm like, how did you not see those as doors? They literally have door frames.
Right?
Yeah. They're just like, wow, completely sealed. There's no doors anywhere. And it's like, guys, those have door frames. You know what a door frame is.
I'd like to point out for the listeners' sake that the sets of these on the doors and on the walls, they have these really cool ancient Cybermen hieroglyphics.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
That are really fun.
I like that a lot.
How far into the future are we? Because like the Cybermen have been like dead for like 500 years or whatever.
Yeah, the dude mentions that they've been like long dead and long defeated.
Like how, and they're all from Earth. So is there like a time period that this is supposed to take place in, or
could this be even post Sensorites, like 29th century?
Let me see if there is a century. 25th century.
Okay.
So before Sensorites.
Yeah. 25th century.
Huh.
So
before the Battle of Yavin.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I'd like to point out that I noticed in this episode, because this is like not a reconstruction, we're able to watch this.
Oh, yeah.
On BritBox.
Yeah.
And seeing Patrick Troughton act and move around for the first time, I always remember seeing interviews with Matt Smith where he said that Patrick Troughton was where he drew like the most inspiration from.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think for the first time, I really got to appreciate that.
Yeah. And this isn't even, I wouldn't even say that this is like Troughton at his most Troughton-y.
No.
I feel like the ensemble is so large that it's hard for him to stand out amongst them.
He kind of had to play the role in every kind of one of these movies of like, don't open the tomb.
Yeah. Don't do that. Don't do that. Do this though.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
He was also surprisingly cowardly, but in a fun way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's kind of Troughton's thing, though.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. He does do that a lot and a lot of times too, he acts cowardly even though he's not.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to like
plays it
throw
up.
people off. He does that a lot.
That thing where like he'll be like, no, listen here, you. But then like the Cybermen will like stand up all the way and he'll be like, oh, on second thought.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, that kind of stuff.
Is this
Right.
the first one we've watched that exists completely?
There's one that had one episode, I think, but that was it. Everything else has been reconstructions for Second Doctor.
Because that's what I was remembering. Because I remember seeing him and Polly and Ben a little
Faceless
bit.
Ones, I think,
Yeah,
had one or two
yeah.
episodes available, but that was the only one. And we kept missing the animated reconstructions by like
Right.
months.
Yeah.
Like where it'd be like 3 months after we cover it, they come out with an animated version. It's like, damn it.
That's right.
Oh, I'm not going to rewatch it again. I just watched it. But
Not even Macro Terror.
I just have the note that brown-faced lady loves pulling switchers. It's just so funny the way that
everyone does.
yeah, but especially her, the way that she plays it, where like as soon as someone's out of the room, she's like, and then runs over and like just can't wait to start pulling levers and flipping switches.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so funny.
Who's the really who's the like nervous one? I don't remember his name because he dies. Spoilers, he like dies halfway through the story.
Right.
The kind of bald guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
He's really
Nervous
funny.
guy.
Yeah, he's just like, don't touch anything. We have to record it, and then everyone's just like, I want to push all the buttons, and it's really really funny.
Yeah. I really liked this first part. It had a very fun like Stephen Sommers mummy like tomb raiding energy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this first one's good, and then the end of it is like a Cybermen dummy target practice thing that pops out, and then somebody gets shot in the back.
Yeah,
and that's the end of this.
You can really see the Prometheus in this.
Sure, yeah, I could see that.
Young Ridley Scott watching this on the floor, dreaming away.
The Tomb of the Cybermen Part 2. Written by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, directed by Morris Berry, produced by Peter Bryant, script edited by Victor Pemberton, air date September 9th, 1967. The rest of the expedition hears the ruckus and comes running. The Doctor investigates and deduces that the room was used to test weapons, as the Cyberman turns out to be a dummy, and the gun fired from behind the two men. Perry wants to call it quits and leave the site and planet immediately, only to be told by Captain Hopper that someone has sabotaged the rocket ship, leaving them stranded until it's fixed. With no other option but to stay for the time being, Klieg finally manages to open the hatch and the team descend, leaving Kaftan and Victoria behind in the main control room. Underneath the building, the group find the titular Tombs of the Cybermen, an army of whom have all been frozen in little pods. Back up above ground, Kaftan drugs Victoria and reseals the hatch. Using the controls down there, Klieg revives the Cybermen and betrays the group, killing yet another member of the expedition when he tries to stop him. As the Cybermen emerge from their pods, Klieg reveals that he and Kaftan belong to the Brotherhood of Logicians, a cult that possess great intellect but no actual power. He believes the Cybermen will be grateful for their revival and will ally themselves with the Brotherhood to conquer the Earth and the rest of the universe. He dreams pretty big. But after they are unfrozen, the Cybermen revive their leader, the Cyber Controller, and the group are taken as prisoners. So, we didn't talk about the Cybermat last episode, but I love the Cybermats.
It's adorable. It looks very 90s because when you get a close up of it, it has these like weird, strained, veined eyeballs.
Yeah. So the thing with the Cybermat that I thought was interesting in doing my research for this episode was that So they had the Daleks, and the Daleks were a huge commercial. There were toys. There were all kinds of
They
stuff.
met the Queen.
Yeah, they met the Queen. Exactly. They were knighted. We have to refer to them as Sir Daleks now, or Dame Daleks, depending on the Dalek. The Daleks were a huge commercial success, and they wanted the Cybermen to be the same thing. The problem was that the Cybermen were humanoid, which made it very difficult to make toys and things like that. And so the Cybermat was literally created as an easy toy. That's why it looks like that.
I love that they like Return of the Jedi'd it. They're just like...
Yeah, they were like, we need a Cyberman that we can make a toy of as easily as we can the Daleks. And so they created the Cybermats. And I love the idea of a small British child like sleeping with a stuffed Cybermat.
Its huge bulbous eyes scanning around the room.
Yeah. It's like one of those things from the 80s, the glowworm.
Oh my God.
It would
you remember those?
It'd be like if you took the eyes of a My Pet Monster and glued them onto the worm.
Oh, onto a glowworm. Yeah. That's pretty accurate.
I was super happy
with a mustache,
with a little. Oh God, yeah, the little whiskers.
Yeah,
on the ground.
Needs a little brush, little bristle.
I loved them. I love the way the little tails slunk around as they moved. They were a delight.
Honestly, I wish I could get one of those like vacuum robots, but like it's shaped, Roomba, but shaped like a Cyberman.
Oh my God,
that would rule.
I don't know. I don't like robots. I don't like bugs, but something about the Cybermats, I'm like, oh, those are so creepy and cute. I love them so much.
Oh. You know what else it reminds me of? It reminds me of Starfire's pet in Teen Titans.
Yeah, her little glowworm thing.
That's what it reminds me of too. Yeah. So yeah, there's this really great part where at the beginning of this, after that guy gets shot, and everyone's like, that Cyberman shot him. And he's like, no, he got shot in the back. He's like, we should be looking for the culprit behind him. Mm-hmm. And it was like, it's like the doctor's like revealing something like, yeah, of course. If you got shot in the back, that is where you should be looking. Why do we have to say this out loud?
I think we've established that it's a crew full of idiots.
Yeah. There's that Prometheus energy. Just a crew full of morons.
Really cool sets. I really loved the big giant like satellite thing that was moving up and down.
Oh yeah.
It was like one of the biggest props I've seen on the show in this era.
I like the big Cyberman tombs thing that defrosts.
Yeah.
They set it to defrost. It looks like like Hollywood Squares is what it looks like.
It does look like Hollywood Squares. And when they were like, it actually is kind of alien like when they were kind of moving and slithering around through the film, and you could see them cracking. It way creepier seeing a Cyberman being born and crawling out than seeing them come out of a factory or like an imprint machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be really cool to see the show kind of playing with that more of them as like almost an organic entity. I don't know. I like it that they're big metal men though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're just in there. They're not like being born. They're just like
literally chilling.
Waking up.
Yeah. They're waking up. They've been frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah. They set them to the defrost setting, and they're slowly. I can't emphasize enough how slowly they defrost. And we just have to watch the whole thing.
I love it though.
I do too, but it's so slow. And then then the doctor's like, no, and then turns it off. And then the other guy is like, yes, and turns it back on.
We should mention Krieg. I believe his name was.
Yeah.
Klieg with an L.
Klieg.
Yeah.
Klieg. Yes.
He kind of reminded me of like Topher Grace and Predators, where he's like convinced that he can make these strange aliens his friends.
Yeah. I'm going to hug one, and you can't stop me.
I want to know.
I want to know what this like brotherhood of logicians does on their spare time. Like the one that's just like, because they belong to this like brotherhood or whatever, and they're like, we're going to use the Cybermen to take over the Earth. Like, do you just do logic puzzles all day? Like, how do you talk
about how cool it's going to be?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like the Knights Templar, but like squares. It's really funny.
Yeah.
It's like it's like that weird club that was dedicated to like finding out who the Doctor was.
Yeah, I haven't thought about that in a while.
Yeah, one of them was Moaning Myrtle.
That episode's good until it's not.
Voice of Babu Freak, Shirley Henderson.
God, when we have to cover that episode on this show, it'll almost feel like a waste of a 10 episode because he's like not even really in it.
Mm-hmm. Can I admit something to you guys?
Sure.
Though? That is the first time I ever heard Mr. Blue Sky by Electric Light Orchestra.
Oh.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
First time I ever heard it was in the trailer for Eternal Sunshine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cass, when was the first time you heard Mr. Blue Sky by?
Do not remember.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians Volume 2.
No.
Yeah. So Klieg shows up and aims a gun and then fires off screen. And
there's a guy off screen yells like, "Look out!" And then
Look
credits.
out. Yeah. and
No,
then he shoots,
that's
and then
episode
credits.
3.
Oh, that's 3? What is
Yeah.
this one?
This one's
Is it just them coming out?
yeah. The
Oh, it's another
Cybermen's
Dalek.
like, they're like, oh, you'll be like us. We're gonna turn you into people.
Oh, I remember because it was 2 in a row ended with a close up on a Cyberman face.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Cybermen. Oh, yeah, I see. Laser gun is my cliffhanger for episode 3. Okay, fair enough.
What do we think of the Cyberman voice?
I'm into it.
No,
I'm not.
not about that life.
I'm not a fan. It takes too long for them to say anything. It drives me crazy.
It wasn't that
You're
bad
in a
with the
hurry.
subtitles on, but it's kind
Oh,
of
you
hard
got
to
subtitles?
understand. Yeah.
I guess my thing with the Cyberman voice that I'm used to is it's just like a more generic Dalek voice.
Yeah.
Sure.
And-
It's deeper.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, I don't like the Cybermen when they're just not as cool Daleks.
Mhm.
So anytime that they were like, oh, this is different, like them rising up and bursting out of film,
Yeah.
I kind of like the droning, like, if you don't want to, it was like I had to kind of listen more,
Uh-huh.
like whenever Bane would talk in Dark Knight Rises. Like, what is he saying?
Bane is like 10% Cyberman.
Sure.
I
With kind of like the brittle stuff, like the stubbornness of a Dalek.
yeah. I think I prefer 10th Planet Cyberman voice.
Mhm.
I think.
It like goes up and down. It like
Yeah.
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 I hear it in my head.
like
I'm
that
not
one.
gonna try to do it.
Yeah, I like that one more. And I like the way that they sort of adapted that version in World Enough in Time and Dr. Falls. I just like that version, I think, a
Mhm.
little bit more than this, because it just feels
Yeah, I
like
think I might too. Now that I'm remembering it,
yeah, I think they just go a little too hard on the computer sounds, and because computers were terrible in the 60s,
Yeah.
it has to sound like garbage.
he kind of sounded almost like Boomhauer-ish at points towards the interviews. I don't know, like they would really pull a lot of syllables out of a word.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of it.
The Tomb of the Cybermen Part 3. Written by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis. Directed by Morris Berry. Produced by Peter Bryant. Script edited by Victor Pemberton. Air date September 16th, 1967. When Victoria wakes up, she confronts Kaftan, who holds her at gunpoint to prevent her from interfering and reopening the hatch. However, she is attacked and rendered unconscious by a cybermat, which Victoria destroys. After retrieving Captain Hopper and his co-pilot from the rocket, they open the hatch to rescue the others, using smoke grenades to distract the Cybermen. Everyone escapes except Toberman, who is taken to be converted. While the group waits for the rocket to be repaired, Klieg and Kaftan are kept in the weapon testing room. The group is attacked by a swarm of cybermats, which the Doctor manages to incapacitate with electrical currents. After repairing a cyber gun on the dummy, Klieg and Kaftan return and open the hatch again, still believing that they can reason and work with the Cybermen.
So this is the one where the actress playing Victoria had the flu, and while she has the flu, she's also dealing with the two, the captain and the co-pilot being a dick to her and calling her Vic all the time.
Oh, bless.
And stopping her from going down and like being really condescending and stuff. That was all in this episode.
This is really the start of her having to, like, okay, I'm by myself. I'm gonna have to start making some moves.
Yeah. She does that really cool thing where when Klieg and what's her face have everybody upstairs in the main room, and they're like, or no, she does. It's just her, I think. I don't think it's Klieg. I think he's still down in the tomb down below. But she's got like a gun to everybody. Like she like wakes up and she like has a gun and she's like, I'm going to shoot you guys or whatever. And then she screams, which distracts her. And then they like kick the gun out of her hand and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Because she knows that Victoria knows that she knows about the cybermat because she got zapped before.
Yeah.
Right.
So she's like, oh no, not again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. More adorable cybermats in this episode.
I really like the conversation that Victoria has with the doctor in like the really quiet moment of this episode.
Yeah.
Where the doctor is like talking about, like she's talking about her father, and then the doctor's like, well, there's too much to think about because we're the only people in the the universe that are doing what we're doing. Which is cool.
Yeah, I really like that moment. And to me, watching it reminded me how weirdly young he seems in this early part of the show, because it's almost like he's pitching it to her of like, no, look, it doesn't, people die and it's sad, but you just got to push it out of your brain and keep having fun. Because like, look how lucky we are to be doing this. I'm like, wow, that's like such a, you know what I mean? Like 40 years of losing people and having bad stuff happen. And now the doctor is so like, I don't know, so much more weathered now.
Yeah, that's true. I think the Time War is the big switch there.
That's
more
true
than
too.
anything.
Yeah. It's just always really cool seeing it all work and fit and rhyme.
Yeah. I think my favorite moment in this episode is when the doctor is like describing how a Cyberman could be destroyed, and then he was like, you could call it a complete metal breakdown, and Jamie's just like, oh, like just it's just so like, oh, doctor, come on. And he's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I love that he apologizes.
Yeah. But he loved it. He loved the joke. A complete metal breakdown.
Because if I did a bad pun like that, I would not apologize.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jamie.
It was a solid pun.
Yeah.
It was good. But Jamie was not having it. But you know what? You know what they say about puns is that only exceptionally intelligent people like puns, because it's like a trigger in your brain that like, it's like, language and whatever. And so you have to be really intelligent to appreciate a pun. And the fact that Jamie appreciates that pun is like, you know what, man?
He identified it. I don't know if he appreciated it.
I don't know. I guess he identified it. I don't know. I like Jamie a lot. Jamie's the
Jamie
best.
is great.
Jamie and 2 are just like the greatest
Yeah.
thing, the greatest combo.
I was reminded watching this that I think he might be pound for pound like the greatest companion.
Jamie?
I don't, or maybe my
Yeah.
favorite. I don't know.
He's in my top 5, I would say. Top 5 companions for sure. I love Jamie so much. And the fact that he's the 2's companion almost his entire run. Like minus a story or 2 stories, like he's his companion the entire run all the way to the end. Is really cool.
I was thinking about Yaz because I think Yaz might be like one of the most like competent companions that's ever been on the show.
Yeah.
And like what a fun combo those two would be. Like the doctors.
Oh man. God. I love Jamie. He's the best. And then yeah, now we get laser gun.
Yes, yeah.
With off-screen shooting. Which leads us into episode 4.
The Tomb of the Cybermen Part 4. Written by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis. Directed by Morris Berry. Produced by Peter Bryant. Script edited by Victor Pemberton. Air date September 23rd, 1967. The Cybermen return to their tombs because their energy levels are running low, while the Cyber Controller and a partially converted Toberman meet with the group. Taking the Cyber Controller to the revitalizing chamber, the Doctor attempts to sabotage the process, but it doesn't work and the controller escapes and turns on them, killing Kaftan. Seeing this, Toberman breaks free of the Cybermen's conditioning and fights the Cyber Controller with his bare hands. The Doctor, Jamie, and Toberman then descend to the hatch once more to freeze the tombs again. Klieg tries to stop them, but he's killed by another Cyberman. Toberman beats this one up too, and the Doctor reactivates the tombs, hoping they will be frozen there for good. The Doctor reseals the hatch and sets up countermeasures to make sure the Cybermen won't be revived again. After resetting the defenses of the building, he discovers the controller is still functional and makes a run for it. The surviving members of the group struggle to keep the controller inside the building, but Toberman sacrifices himself to seal up the electrified front doors, electrocuting himself and the controller. Once the rocket is repaired, the expedition leaves, and the TARDIS crew also take their leave, but don't notice an escaped cybermat which approaches Toberman's body. I don't know. I think for the most part, I like the first half of this because, like, I feel like the last half of this story kind of drags a little.
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks that, like, one of the few, like, actual, people of color.
Yeah, not brown-faced lady,
Yeah.
but, like, an actual... yeah.
He's, like, brainwashed. He doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue anyway. And then he's unbrainwashed because his, like, employer, like, they call him her servant, which I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
So she dies, and then he's like, oh, they suck. We gotta kill the Cybermen. So, like, the doctor takes him back down into the tombs, and then he, like, ends up dying.
Right.
To close it. And I'm like, that's...
Toberman. That's his name.
Yeah.
Toberman.
Yeah, Toberman was unfortunate. I mean, it sort of his characterization was very, you know, just played into a lot of really bad tropes.
Yeah.
And really kind of like awkward, poorly handled, just like text and subtext stuff.
Yeah.
I will say that I think like I kind of looked into the performer, the actor, and he's also like had a really storied career as a stuntman at the time.
Oh.
And so I found myself, and especially when he got his like cool Cyberman arm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was, you know, him as his performance and his character sort of rose above a lot of that like gross, awkward stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself kind of rooting for him as a character despite. Yeah. And I think, and Scott pointed out a lot of stuff as we were watching. I think more than on a lot of episodes that I've watched, this one kind of like aged poorly in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I guess the original intention for Toberman was that he was deaf. And that's why he didn't talk much. And that they were going to like sign to each other, which I imagine would have been even more of like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Because they probably would have just like been like making like weird
Instead of
would
using
they have actually
actual
gone-
sign language. Yeah.
right. They wouldn't have used actual sign language. There's no way.
Not on the time.
Yeah, right. They would have just been like, you know, doing like baseball moves or like,
Yeah.
or just like made up fake sign language probably. But he was going to be deaf and he was going to have like a contraption on his head to assist with his hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I guess part of the Cybermen thing was that they were going to give him his hearing back. And so like in the end of the story when he rips his humanity back from the Cybermen and saves the day, he was going to be able to hear everyone for the first time in the episode. And I guess eventually they just like ditched all of that because it was like, I don't know if it was just they were spending too much time on it or they didn't think people would get it or what, but they pulled all of that out of the scripts before they started shooting. But that was the original intention, was that like he gets his hearing back because of the Cybermen, but then has to sacrifice his life to save everyone from the Cybermen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Feels like a lateral move.
yeah.
Like that would have given him more characterization, but it also sounds really weird.
And I can't imagine the execution would have been great.
No, because it sounds
Yeah.
okay, like as you're
Yeah.
saying it right now, but I'm just like, that probably would have sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He-
ultimately, unfortunately, it feels very superfluous or not attached to like the main narrative.
Yeah.
So it seemed like it could have been like easy. Like, it was like, oh, well, this has to cut because it's, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he does a really good job of making things look heavy.
Yeah.
There's
I
a part
guess-
where he just like yeets a Cyberman into, okay. Yeah. So
Hell yeah.
he struggles with I'm painting a picture. He struggles with a human actor in a Cyberman suit, listener.
Mm-hmm.
But then he struggles and they get off camera and then he returns on camera with like an inflatable Cyberman doll. And he struggles with that and then like, launches it into a computer and
Lifts it over his head. Yeah.
full out. And then like, sparks shoot out.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's incredible.
He is also responsible for the controversial, brutal Cyberman death where he
Yes.
like rips a Cyberman's guts out and like baking soda bubbles over out like his cyber guts.
Which is so funny because like they're like, oh my god, it's so gory, and it's like it's baking soda and oil.
Yeah,
like
you can't even
they're
tell what
not
color
human.
it is.
Yeah,
It's the implication, I guess.
yeah, I guess it's the implication.
It reminds me of like Clone Wars episodes where like a droid can get just like eviscerated or like blown apart, but it's okay because he's a robot.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Toberman goes out as the OG Hodor, as he holds the door to stop the Cybermen from exiting the tomb, and then is electrocuted upon getting the door shut because of the sort of like security measures in place on the tomb. But yeah, he's like the OG Hodor. Like, I mean, literally, like, you know, depicted as a very simple man, and says like literally says something about holding the door as his final line as he shuts it, and then goes out like a hero. And then there's this great moment, Nick, that made you gasp at the very end. Do you want to describe the final moment of episode 4?
Oh yeah. So as they're holding as he's holding the door,
Yeah.
a single adorable Cybermat manages to like wiggle through the doorway undetected.
Yeah.
So the episode ends, like the unit's tighter. They're like, all right, bye. The doctor's like, now I just upped the charge, so I guess if anyone finds it, they'll die, and I'll never know about it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
But at least we'll never hear from those damn Cybermen ever again. And then like the camera pans down and we see that last Cyberman like wiggle towards Toberman's body.
Yeah.
And like implying that like he's going to be like the new genesis of a new race of Cybermen.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was like a really cool, like kind of Twilight Zone monster movie review.
That I'm fairly certain is never ever paid off, but I love it. I love that I love the implication.
Yeah.
Well, now I know what my Doctor Who spec can be about.
Yeah, there we go. Just fill in that gap. So, what do we think about Tomb of the Cybermen as a whole?
I still really like this one. Like Nick said earlier, a lot of the stuff as far as like
social politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Treatment of people.
Yes.
Has aged poorly, which sucks because it's like we're still in the 25th century and like being crappy to black people. That sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I really like this one. I like Troughton in it.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie and Victoria are fun. I always like a good Cyberman story because there's so few like actually good Cyberman stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing I like about this is it's just like it's got like a turn of the century, like, I don't know, like Indiana Jones vibe, but like in the future, but simultaneously in the past. I don't know. It's
like Prometheus.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I agree with Kaz. Yeah, it was really had a fun kind of spelunking Tomb Raider vibe. But like, I really like the crew. I really like the ensemble. And I think I'm starting to learn that I prefer proto-alien Doctor Who episodes as opposed to like, you worded it really well, Scott, the other day of like Tribe A and Tribe B aren't getting along and like politics.
Yeah.
And like, there's like, a city advisor that's like scheming to like, you know,
yeah,
and like it features some really cool. I really like the Dalek, the Cybermen design. I thought they looked really cool. I thought the sets were really cool. I really liked I loved the dynamic between Jamie and the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And as I mentioned earlier, I really liked Victoria's arc. Like when she like tears the Cyberman's arm off as like it's trying to get through the portal or the hole. Yeah, I'm excited to see this crew keep going.
Yeah, I like this story too. With all of the caveats that you guys mentioned, but I do like that the Cybermen are legitimately intimidating in this episode. Given what they're working with in terms of like costumes and budget,
right.
But like legitimately, intimidating. There's a really great line where the cyber controller is talking to Jamie and the Doctor and a few other people about controlling them and being one of them and et cetera, and Jamie says, but we're humans, we're not Cybermen. And then the cyber controller says, you will be, which is legitimately like intimidating and like kind of creepy in a in a really cool way. It's much more intimidating and creepy and scary coming from these kind of Cybermen where you can see the humanity still there.
Yeah.
As opposed to in the Russell T Davies era when they would say stuff like that and you would just be like, I mean, I guess like
big chunky robot toys.
Yeah, right. It's hard to like reckon with the fact that those things used to be human because they don't look remotely human. And so the fact that these look human adds to the creepiness. And so when they say stuff like that, it's like, ugh, yikes.
Yeah. Like whenever you remember that they are like pieces and parts of humans inside of there that were like forcibly, you know what I mean? Like when you get into like how they work, they're like super creepy and gross. But so often they just become like nutcracker toy men.
Yes,
dudes.
Totally. Yeah. So like I do really like this story. I think it's really entertaining. A lot of the stuff doesn't hold up. There's a few really good classic Doctor Who episodes that are similar in that fashion where you're like, wow, this episode's really good, except for that one thing that's horrible.
Except for that one thing that's part of the plot or
that is extremely racist or bad. There's quite a few episodes that are like that. And this is no exception, unfortunately. But the stuff that works really well. And it was fun revisiting. I think this is a really solid Cybermen story. I think it's one of the best for sure.
And like for some reason, I feel worth mentioning that to me, it seemed like one of the more accessible episodes of the classic era that I've seen.
The Troughton era in general is paced a lot better than the first Doctor's era.
Yes. Yeah.
The first Doctor's era almost feels like everyone's doing improv and like bad improv, like bad, slow improv. whereas the second Doctor's era starts ramping up the pace a little bit better. And I think that the whole show sort of gets more accessible as a result, I think. So anyway.
Tomb of the Cybermen, indeed.
Tomb of the Cybermen. And in the end, we were all the Tomb of the Cybermen.
The real Tomb of the Cybermen were the friends we made along the way.
Mm-hmm. Actually.
Oh, God.
Actually, that makes more sense than I'd care to admit or would like to think about. So anyway, what's next? What's coming up next, Cass?
Next, we're doing Colony in Space. Which is another 6-parter, but I don't know. I don't remember this one, so it probably is not great, but it'll be fun because it's Pertwee.
Yeah, it's Pertwee. It's the Master because it's from the season where every episode story had the Master in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't remember the logistics of this one.
You just know he's going to karate chop somebody.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought this was one episode, and then
it's 6,
and then I no. I mean, I thought it was a different episode. Okay. And then found out that it wasn't. I thought it was I think one of the Peladon episodes stories. I thought it was like the murder mystery one, and I was like, that's a fun one, but it's not that one.
Alas, it's not that one.
Yeah. Joe.
Oh, Joe. Okay.
Joe.
I was like, who's Joe? Oh, Joe.
J-O. Joe. Yeah. So Joe is the companion, and Pertwee's the Doctor, and we're in a colony in space. That's all I know. And the Master's in
it.
The Master will be there somehow.
Yeah. And probably not revealed until like the second or third episode.
He's probably going to have another like crappy latex mask that he like rips off, and he's like,
that could very well be racist.
Yes.
My name is Guy Incognito.
Oh yeah. I don't remember it. I know I've seen it, but I don't remember it.
Yeah.
And we'll find out together.
We'll know him immediately the second he enters camera.
That's probably true. Although Delgado doesn't do a lot of costumes. Like
no,
disguises.
that's mostly Ainley.
Yeah, that's more of an Ainley thing. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, Colony in Space. You should check out our Patreon, duallygenre.com/support. As we talked about a couple of weeks ago, we've got some goals. And if we reach one of those goals, then we'll be able to vote on some bonus content that we're planning on making for this show. You know, there's like, we want to do like spin-off stuff maybe, and that would all be for the main feed, not for Patreon. But in order to do it, we need to pass that Patreon goal, and then it needs to be voted on by the patrons. And that first goal is 100 patrons. So become a Patreon supporter at duelinggenre.com/support. And once we cross that 100 threshold, we'll be able to do a bonus show. So look into that, check it out, see if it's worth your time. There's lots of bonus content that is exclusive to Patreon that I think you'll want to be a part of. We're all doing stuff. Cass is leading a mini series called Dueling Genre versus Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 1, where we're talking about every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Cass is the host of that miniseries.
Yeah.
So if you want to hear us talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you'll want to be a Patreon subscriber, or there's Dueling Genre Tonight, which is a show that I host with a revolving panel of Dueling Genre hosts where we talk about the week's entertainment news, amongst other things. So that'll be a really fun show if you're into listening to our opinions of entertainment news. I think that'll be a really fun show. It was long requested, a show in that format. So I'm excited to get to that. Also check out our duelinggenre.com/merch page. That's at TeePublic. Duelinggenre.com/merch. Go there and check out the shirts we have. We have new credit shirts. Check those out. Tell me if you like them or if you have any suggestions for other ones. I would like to do some Doctor Who ones. Let me know if there's any in particular that you would be interested in. Are you just interested in like showrunner credits? Do you want actor credits? Do you want me to do like fake credits, like credits that don't exist, like a I don't know, like a David Tennant and Billy Piper shirt, like something like that, where it's like there are two credits together on a shirt. I would never wear that. I wouldn't be caught dead in that shirt personally, but maybe David Tennant and I don't know, someone else. Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper. That's a shirt I would wear.
Nice.
Anyway, in any event, you guys know how I feel about those that pair. Let me know about all of that, and then we'll be back next week to talk about the first half of The Colony in Space. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.